Salt rules, solubility rules for Edexcel students. You need to be aware of these rules. Firstly, all sodium, potassium, and ammonium compounds are soluble. So if you see sodium chloride, sodium carbonate, anything like that is soluble. Now, all nitrates of any type are soluble. So it doesn't have to be group 1. Magnesium nitrate, copper nitrate, lead nitrate, sodium nitrate, everything is soluble. All chlorides are soluble except silver chloride and lead chloride. All sulfates are soluble except barium sulfate, calcium sulfate, and lead sulfate. And as you know, these are always soluble, but the carbonates are almost all insoluble, and so are the hydroxides. Only these carbonates are soluble. That's why when we refer to carbonates, we often refer to them as bases, not alkalis, because they're not supposed to be soluble in water. So, for example, sodium carbonate is soluble, but magnesium carbonate is not. Potassium hydroxide is soluble, but copper hydroxide is not. Okay, so only these are always soluble. These carbonates and hydroxides are like always insoluble. The nitrates are always soluble. And then the chlorides and sulfates are mostly soluble except these cases. You just need to learn this table. Okay, there's no easy way out. Now, the final thing that you need to know how to do is how to form an insoluble salt from two soluble ones. The reason they call it a double displacement is, let me show you with an equation. Let us use some examples. So a soluble salt would be something like sodium chloride and silver nitrate. They're both soluble. They're going to now double swap. So the sodium chloride becomes sodium nitrate, and the silver nitrate becomes silver chloride. So they've essentially swapped partners, if you like. Okay, they've done a swap. These two have just swapped. Okay. Now the products will be this, which is soluble, and this, which is insoluble. So that's why we call it a precipitation, because we formed a precipitate. So the idea is that two solutions, so a solution and a solution, makes a solution and a solid. Okay? So you pour two solutions together and you get a precipitate. So to do this method, you'll need to pick two soluble salts, which is why you need to know the solubility rules. So if the examiner says make silver chloride, I automatically chose sodium chloride and silver nitrate because they were both soluble. Now the method, if you ever play a football game, like Football Manager or FIFA, I like to call it the FWD. Filter, wash, and dry. These are like the essential steps. So you mix equal volumes of each solution in a beaker and you stir it. That's step 1. Okay. As soon as that happens, they'll form a precipitate. Okay, so you filter off the precipitate, so filter. The filter will go through and the residue will stay here, the one that you want. Then W is for wash. You wash this with distilled water to remove any traces of the products or the reactants that are soluble. Because there's any traces on top of it, when you add the distilled water, it'll dissolve and go through the filter paper. And then D is for dry. Dry the solid in a drying oven or on the windowsill, or pat it dry with a paper towel. And you have your answer. So mix, filter, wash, dry. It's actually not a difficult method, but it involves you selecting the right salts. So let's make up one more that we want to make. Say we want to make barium sulfate, which is insoluble. What do we pick? Well, if you remember, the rule was all nitrates are soluble. So to be safe, I'll just pick barium nitrate. Then I'll pick, for sulfates, I'll just pick a group 1, sodium sulfate again. Because I know all sulfates of group 1 are soluble. So I can just pick sodium sulfate. So if these two mix, they'll swap. They'll make barium sulfate and sodium nitrate. And barium sulfate is insoluble. That was on the rules. And that's how I would form my solid. Okay, that completes the course for you guys as well on the acids and alkalis. And the final part of your inorganic chemistry is the chemical test. So join me next.